ay puchico, or que cosa, or something like that, and the kids would say, what? What? Now you all don't have that because everybody here speaks, that's wonderful. But then if you're one person and nobody else speaks Spanish, it's like, ooh, that's weird. Or, why are you talking that funny language? And what they're really saying is, wow, I wish I could speak that language. I wish I could speak 2 languages. But they can't. So sometimes they make fun of you. So I quit speaking Spanish for a while until I got to be a little older, and I decided to go back to Central America where my mother was from. And my wife and I went back there, and we started speaking Spanish again. And I wrote a lot of poems there. And I wrote them in Spanish and English. And I'd like to read to you another one. When I went back to Guatemala, you know, there was something there, or back to Central America, there was something there I didn't realize how harsh it was. People were really poor, and we worked with poor folks. And this story is about a little poor boy where we lived. And his father, just tell you a couple of things. It's a poem, but it's also like a story. So listen to the story. It's got something happening in it. But a couple of things. One, the boy's father has been kidnapped by the enemies. There's a war going on. And so the boy's father had been kidnapped. And a friend of mine, Bob's a gringo, Bob and I went to this village to find out what happened. And so while we're going, there's a lot of burning going on because in Central America, when they're going to plant corn, they burn off last year's corn stalks. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they burn off the land. And the land is on fire. So you'll hear that through the whole poem. So here it is. It's called The Boy. We spent the day collecting tears the kidnappers had given a wife. Piricong, the village sheltered by flames that danced off mountains in the dry season. The village gave us their treasures, 2 tortillas and a cup of coffee. We set camp on sun-baked ground that cooled under stars. The mountains flickered shadows on the war zone. A boy from the village dared to sit beside me. He saw the fire in the hills like gods that burst open the heart of the earth. Bob, my companion, spoke in a weary voice. They just die in California, thinking about those groups fighting for the rights of trees as we watched these hills burn clean. Bob and I spoke in English. The words whispered mystery to the boy. His eyes closed, an exhaustion of witnessing too much in one day. ¿Estás cansado vos? I asked him, breaking his spell. ¿Quieres acostarte? Sí, he smiled, taking my offer. I pulled his thin weight to me, rested his head upon my lap. His hand drifted over my leg and dangled like a resting puppet dashed upon stone. The fire crawled down and ate last year's corn stalks. Its whisper crackled smoke that rose with a north wind to search for a kidnapped father. Crow and held me in a boy's grip, tight as this youth, old as this. Bob and I ate and grumbled over our filth and weariness. The people bid us goodbye with the hope that they could once again be at our service. I left them. Tonight I eat meat, drink an imported beer, and wear clothes, many clothes. I weep useless tears as the boy bores out of my chest and smiles upon
of you who are in this room. The high school that had 32 students in its first graduating class.
Anymore, we have 4 children. I kind of blew that out of the water. But she used to do that a lot. And I was getting really tired of it. But then she left me for a weekend to go to a wedding, to a friend of ours' wedding. Oh, and I missed her. Oh, 3 days. It was killing me. We've been married a year, and I was just dying. My wife wasn't with me, and I was starting to miss these little things that she did. So I wrote this poem to her. Plastic bags, a pile of radical rags, a list telling of another list that straightens out life in a row of and desire in a choreographed day. Come home. Hey, this is one I want to touch you all. I think here's a poem. It's the last poem. Now I'm going to read you a story. It's just a story that I'm working on. But this poem is it's funny, you think of Alabama, you wouldn't think of a big Mexican. All of our friends were Mexican, they're Latinos. And my friend Guillermo Gonzalez was my best friend. He picked tomatoes, and all of his children, he had 10 children and 21 grandchildren. And they travel. Dinero. Ah, de veras? Okay, anybody else have an? You're right. But there's another. Well, el trago. Okay, those are the two things. When I come from, donde vivía yo, pisto fue dinero. ¿Tienes un poco de pisto? Sí. ¿Cuánto quieres? Oh, 5 pesos o algo así. Dame un poco de pisto, ¿verdad? Pero mi amigo Guillermo, el pisto fue el trago. Fue el trago. Un poco de vino. You know, it was a drink. It was like for adults. They would have a little bit of wine or something. So it was a Monday morning. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I said, hey, Guillermo, ¿qué tal? Hey, and I was thinking about some money that we had to pick up from a friend or something. Tenemos que agarrar este pisto ahorita. Este pisto. Él dijo, ¿pisto? ¿Ahora? Ya son las 9. Friends. And this group, PAW, they were going to come in and take all the Mexican folks away and then put American workers in there. Well, it was just crazy. It was just terrible what happened. But you'll hear in here what my Mexican friends did. They were wonderful. When the paw brought us down, oh, I got to explain another thing. I have a friend of mine named Patty, who's Mexican, and she was visiting me, and she had crutches because she was crippled. One leg was hurt, and so she's in the house when the immigration comes. When the paw brought us down, I watched the television news, and Patty hid away in a closet. Bad timing that my friend paid a visit during the state of siege, when La Migra dropped from helicopters and ran like a crazed serpent, squeezing life out of the deepest country back roads. The news spoke of the recovery of 500 jobs stolen by Mexicans. I said no, I made no moves, while families fled into the woods, and a friend was detained while La Migra confiscated his truck filled with pillows and blankets. The children nestled into the breasts of mothers who kept vigil over the noises running through the mountain. I stood in my home while the dance of a legal sin frolicked right outside, laughing as La Migra flicked the evil eye through my window before knocking on my door. I opened the closet. My lovely illegal friend lay under her crutches, 2 bars that defended the throb of her caged heart. The Mexicans, brought down perhaps, but not maimed. They tell me that deported cousins ate breakfast in Monterrey and had supper in Houston. Tomorrow they'll have lunch in a Birmingham truck stop. The mountains here, they awoke to the hidden odor of tortillas and the rising steam of boiled beans. People are a little shy. But, you know, some people say, oh, poets, that's sissy stuff. You know, I don't read and write poetry. If you go back to Mexico, if you go back to Central America and visit, and you mention poets, oh, boy. Your grandmothers and your mothers say, oh, a poet. They really hold poets up. So if you're a poet and you're Latino, it's a wonderful thing to be. It's a wonderful thing to be because your grandmothers and your mothers, I remember my mother, she had to memorize poems when she was a kid. Like she'd have to memorize pages, 10, 15 pages of poems, and she'd have to rattle them off in the schools, and it was wonderful. They did a good job. So if you're a poet, that's a great thing to be. It's wonderful. What you're trying to do is to say something that's hard to be said. Like I could see a boy in here named, let's say a boy named Juan. You know, and Juan, oh, he met Maria Luisa. Oh, and Maria Luisa's in the other class. Oh, boy. Ay, qué linda Maria Luisa. Oh, qué bonita. Oh, tan chula. Yo quiero decir algo de ella. You know, I want to say something, but what do I say? So you start writing. So you pick up a pencil and you start writing about Maria Luisa and how bonita she is. But you want to say it better. You want to say, not just that she's bonita, but sus ojos, tus ojos son como el cielo. Tu pelo es como una catarata de agua que se cae. Tus labios son como, no sé, tomatillos, algo así. You want to say something, because Maria Luisa is so beautiful, so you want to put her in a poem, you know? It's great. Or sometimes, you know, you write about hard things, you know? You write about things like my mother and father That's what poetry's about. Now I'm going to change, though, because I'm going to tell you a story.